I will never forget the sound of my grandfather's body hitting the gravel. It wasn't just the sickening crunch of beneath, it was the way everything went so eerily silent right after. 1 minute, he was yelling at the trespassers who'd stormed onto our land with clipboards and fake badges. The next, he was on the ground, gasping, his cane flung across the driveway like it had been swatted away. The woman responsible, a red-faced, obese woman in a stiff floral blouse who called herself President Karen of the Homeowners Safety Commission. But we all knew that wasn't a real thing. Our ranch isn't part of any HOA, never has been. Never will be. It's been in our family for 86 years, proudly sitting outside any suburban grid, nestled in the hills where barbed wire fences still mean something. But a new development called Pine Summit had popped up just over the ridge, bringing with it people like Karen, people who looked at land like ours and saw potential. To them, it wasn't a home. It was a future dog park, a tennis court, maybe even a new community center if they could bully enough signatures out of their neighbors. They'd been knocking on doors for weeks, passing out fake citations, trying to recruit the ranches along the county line. Most of us ignored them, but Grandpa didn't. He was a Marine in Vietnam, the kind who'd lost more friends than he could count, and he treated his land like a sacred trust. So when Karen and her clipboard army crossed onto our property without permission, he limped out with his Stetson tilted low and a rifle slung over his shoulder, not to threaten, but to show he was serious. "Get off my land," he told her. "You and your little circus don't belong here." That's when Karen turned to one of her henchmen, some guy with cargo shorts and a lanyard, and snapped, "He's threatening us. Neutralize him." It happened fast. Too fast. The man shoved my grandpa hard in the chest. He stumbled backward, twisted, and went down. The sound he made wasn't even human. My knees gave out just hearing it. Karen looked shocked for a second, but then she straightened her shoulders and said, "He shouldn't have resisted community enforcement." They left, just like that, sped off in their fake patrol golf cart while Grandpa groaned in the dust with his leg shattered. I wasn't home when it happened, but my little brother called me while still crying. I dropped everything and sped 2 hours straight to the ranch. By the time I got there, Grandpa was in the ER, sedated. The X-rays showed a compound fracture and torn ligaments. The sheriff had already visited, but said there wasn't much they could do unless we had evidence it wasn't mutual contact. Mutual contact? The man is 83 and walks with a cane. That's when I made the call that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and texted 3 simple words to the family group chat: "Karen hurt Grandpa." For minutes later, my cousin Troy responded with a photo of his Harley already idling in the driveway. 2 others replied with gifs of drones launching. Another just wrote, "We ride at dawn. Let me explain something about my family. We're not wealthy. We're not powerful. But we're tight. And when someone touches one of ours, especially the man who taught us to ride horses before we could ride bikes, you better believe we come as one." The next morning, 7 Harleys rumbled down Karen's pristine cul-de-sac, American flags fluttering behind them, engines loud enough to wake every spoiled labradoodle in the neighborhood. Behind them came my cousin Maddie in her pickup, hauling a flatbed trailer with lawn chairs, folding tables, and a full legal team from her wife's non-profit law firm. And overhead, a coordinated drone swarm, 10 in all, hovering like steel wasps with HD lenses recording every inch of everything. Karen came out in a robe, clutching a mug that said, "HOA Boss Lady," and had the audacity to shout, "This is a private neighborhood." Maddie stepped out and calmly replied, "Good. You'll be happy to know this is a private lawsuit." We handed out cease and desist orders, exposed Karen's fake organization with printed records from the state registry, and laid out the charges: assault of an elder, impersonation of a public officer, illegal trespassing, and coordinated fraud. But it wasn't the papers that broke her. It was the drones. They'd been flying over the last 2 weeks, quietly recording her compliance checks, where she trespassed, vandalized property, and filmed people without consent. We had timestamps, GPS logs, audio of her screaming, "Enforce it. I don't care if they're elderly." And just when Karen looked like she was going to faint, my youngest cousin Ethan's, only 17, tapped a button on his phone, and the drones lit up the sky. Not fireworks. Messages. Each drone blinked in perfect synchronization, spelling out glowing words in the air over her neighborhood. This is not your land. And then, JOSTFORGRANDPA. Kids came out to cheer. Neighbors peeked from behind hedges, finally realizing the woman who'd been bullying them for months wasn't who she claimed to be. Karen stumbled backward, dropped her mug, and screamed, "This is harassment. You'll all be arrested." We just smiled, because that's when the real twist happened. A black SUV rolled up the street. The door opened, and out stepped a tall man in a button-down shirt with the state seal on his chest. His name was Marcus Hill, Deputy Director of the County Legal Commission, and as fate would have it, he was also my Aunt Rita's godson. He walked right past us and said, loud enough for every porch ring cam to catch, "Karen Trask, you are under investigation for impersonating a public officer, creating a fraudulent entity, and orchestrating coordinated elder abuse. You'll need to come with me for questioning." Karen turned ghost white. Someone in the crowd actually clapped. Her face twitched in rage, then panic, then disbelief. She opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. And just like that, the woman who claimed to be the queen of the neighborhood was escorted off her own lawn while neighbors watched in stunned silence. Karen was booked and processed within the hour. The charges weren't just symbolic, they were serious. Impersonating a public officer carries real jail time in our state, especially when the impersonation involves physical injury to a senior citizen. But what truly stunned the community was the paper trail the DA's office uncovered in the following days. Karen hadn't just bullied people and thrown around fake finesse, been collecting compliance donations from scared elderly homeowners and undocumented families. In total, over $42,000 had vanished into a slush fund labeled Community Enforcement Emergency Reserve. That's not all. When the court order gave us legal access to search the storage shed she'd used as her command center, we found hidden GoPros, old ID badge printers, a stack of forged letters from fake departments, and a whiteboard covered in what looked like tactical planning. She had mapped out which households were weakest, which could be flipped, and which were resistance threats. Our ranch was in red. Beside it, she had scribbled "force if necessary." The town flipped. Local news picked it up first, then state press, and within a week the story hit national TV. They called it the HOA that never was. Grandpa's story, his legs still in a full cast, became the heart of the coverage. He gave a trembling but fierce interview from his front porch, holding his old Purple Heart in one hand and the drone footage remote in the other. "They thought I was too old to fight," he said. "They forgot I raised warriors." The trial drew hundreds. Karen tried to claim mental instability, but the prosecutor dismantled that angle in seconds. Her own emails showed premeditation, and her fake bylaws were so extensive they filled 4 binders. During testimony, a mother from 3 doors down broke down crying as she told the court how Karen threatened to have her children removed by child services if she didn't mow her lawn by Tuesday. Another man admitted he paid Karen $500 to avoid a fake lien on his home. A veteran in a wheelchair said Karen tried to fine him for having a non-standard ramp on his front steps. "When our family was called, I stood first. I told the courtroom what it felt like to hear your grandfather cry for help from the dirt. How my cousins dropped everything to ride in, not out of vengeance, but because we believed in standing up for what's right." Then Troy spoke, voice shaking with emotion. "We're not perfect. We cuss, we ride loud, we show up late to things. But we don't hurt people. We don't lie to neighbors. And we damn sure don't knock down old men because they said no." The final witness was Grandpa himself. They wheeled him in, leg braced, eyes sharp. He stared right at Karen the entire time. When asked what justice meant to him, he said only this: "She tried to build power on top of people she thought wouldn't fight back. She found out we're the kind who don't quit. And that's all I've got to say." The courtroom was still for a full 10 seconds after that. The judge didn't hold back. Karen was sentenced to 6 years, with 2 years mandatory before parole. Her assets were frozen, her home seized and auctioned to pay restitution to the victims she'd extorted. The HOA she'd invented was dissolved with an official state declaration. All homeowners she had targeted received full refunds, and every fraudulent citation was legally expunged. But the punishment that seemed to sting Karen the most? The town renamed the park she tried to take over. It used to be called Pine Summit Community Green. Now it's Raymond Ward Honor Field, named after Grandpa. His photo stands on a plaque by the flagpole with the words, "He stood when others looked away." The day of the renaming, the drone crew returned. This time not for war but for light. As the crowd gathered under a warm dusk sky, the drones lifted off from behind the stables and formed glowing shapes above the ranch. Pair of open hands. An eagle in flight. Then, finally, a single phrase that brought tears to nearly every eye. Not all heroes ride horses. Some ride Harleys. Grandpa looked up at the sky with his hand over his heart and whispered, "Semper Fi, boys." Now, life's quieter. The property's protected under a new state designation. No interference private heritage zone. Troy and Maddie run weekend classes at the ranch teaching teens about land rights and fraud prevention. Ethan's drone footage has gone viral, landing him a scholarship to the State Tech University. And Grandpa? He still sits on the porch every morning with coffee, waving to the neighbors who stop by not to push papers or threats, but to bring pie, say thanks, or just sit with a man who showed them what standing tall looks like. Some people still ask me how we kept our cool, how we didn't lose ourselves in rage. But here's what they don't get. Rage is easy. What takes real strength is building something from the ashes that actually lasts. Karen thought power came from titles and fear, but real power is knowing who you are, standing your ground, and surrounding yourself with people who show up when it matters most. And now I want to ask you, reading this wherever you are, what would you have done? Would you have fought, filed, raged, rallied? Was the drone show justice or too far? Was Karen's sentence too much or not enough? Tell me what you believe. Right or wrong, your voice matters.